All right, back again, solo episode, answering the million messages telling me to talk publicly about Colton's 1,200 kilo total. So that's going to be the primary focus of this podcast. Yes, if you are new here, I've gotten a lot more followers, and Zero's gotten a lot more attention since then. I do coach Colton and have coached Colton for a little while now, and I'll go into that soon. If you are interested, I've already done a podcast on coaching the elite lifter. That's always worth a listen, just to talk to some of the nuance or some of the considerations that come into coaching people that are really strong and making them stronger, because I have a long proven track record of doing this, if you don't already know that. And I also did an episode on Colton's programming style following his all-time 125 kilo total that we did at Big Dogs a little while ago. And I'm pretty sure they're separate episodes. I can't remember if they are separate episodes or not, but they're definitely there. I spoke about it somewhere. Anyway, going to keep talking about it. Before I talk about, our history and kind of some of the stuff that we did leading into this competition and shine some more light on it, to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, I want to talk about the significance of this total and what Colton was able to achieve and where he is potentially going. I want to give you some behind the scenes because I don't think Colton is going to get out there very much. He's a pretty shy, pretty quiet guy. Likes to keep to himself. He's not doing this for the clout. He's doing it for himself. I know he just did an episode with Mark Bell, and I'm assuming he'll probably jump on another podcast or two if he feels up to it. But I don't think he particularly enjoys them, which is fair. Not everyone does. So I want to talk to you some of the behind the scenes stuff that happened on the way to this prep, and also stuff that he probably wouldn't want to talk about because he sees the world a little bit different, especially when it comes to the lifting side of things. First, I want to stop first again and talk about the significance of this. So since 1972, when sort of the first recorded all-time world record total was, which was 1066 by John Cook. I'm going to be looking over here a bit because I've got all my notes here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times that the record has been broken. So in total, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all-time world record holders of this total since 1972. So do the math on that. That's like, I don't even know the math on that. 53 years. In 53 years of powerlifting history, only 7 people can say that they have the biggest raw total of all time. Disclaimer as well, I'm going to say raw. Argue, go ahead in the comments. It gives us more views on Instagram about what raw versus wraps is. You're going to have the camp saying no, raw is sleeves. The camp saying no, raw is classic raw because raw, when it first started, included knee wraps and that's what it was back in the day, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to call it raw. I'm including wraps. Yes, lifting in sleeves is slightly different to lifting in wraps, but I'm going to refer to it as raw for all intents and purposes for this video. Again, think what you want about that, argue about it. My position, which is, I don't know, Colton's going to break the sleeve total eventually anyway, so, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant at this point. Okay, so in 1972, John Cook had 1066. So some of the things I want to highlight as part of the significance of this is that John Cook was the lightest person besides Colton to have this record, and he was 146 kilograms. So most people who have had this record, all the people who have had this record besides Colton were over 140 kilograms. John was the lightest at 146. He held that record for 3 years. Then Don Reinhardt had the record at 1084, so he pushed it up. It's not on open powerlifting for some reason, but if you dig around on the internet, you'll find the numbers that made that up and a little bit more about him. So because it's not on open powerlifting, we don't have the recorded body weight that he did that at. However, if you look at his open powerlifting, he's generally always around 160 kilograms. Don held that record for then 38 years until 2013, where Andrei Milanichev broke the record, setting it to 1100. He then went on to break it again at 1140. So he had the all-time record at 1140 at Big Dogs. I was there when that went down. It was incredible. Probably one of the most exciting big comps that ever happened was that first Big Dogs. It was incredible. At the time, I was coaching Reese Keane, so I was there coaching. I was there backstage. It was a big show between Andre and Eric Lilley, and yeah, it was just a really fun, really cool competition. The room was packed. It was like one of the highlight events for me from a powerlifting perspective. So same thing. Marcus's original mindset with Big Dogs, well, continued mindset is that there's no weigh-ins because there's no formula. It's literally who has the biggest total wins. It doesn't matter how much you weigh. That was the whole premise of it. So they didn't record the weights for the first Big Dogs. They didn't even weigh them in at all. So he started weighing them in post Big Dogs 1. I can't remember if he did it as like a spectacle or because open powerlifting had sort of become a thing by then. I can't remember, but all the Big Dogs afterwards have body weights. Big Dogs 1 didn't. And Andre weighed in consistently again around 160 kilograms. Andre, in my eyes, like, because he was the best of all time when I was coming up, Andre Milanchev was an unreal lifter, unreal to watch. Yeah, super cool. So he currently sits at number 5 in the world. Then, of course, you had Dan Bell come along 6 years later, 2019. He went 11:42 then to push it by that 2.5 kilos. He's now currently sitting in number 2, of course, because he then went on to break the record and take it back in 2021 off the next guy. And he ended up, with 11:82.5. And same thing, Dan Bell, big guy. He weighed in around 180 kilos when he did that 11:82. Peter Petras, he is currently number 3, so he broke the all-time record. He took it off Dan Bell in 2020. He went 11:60, so he pushed it up 17 kilos, broke it quite significantly. Fun fact, I wrapped Peter Petras at Big Dogs 2. That's my claim to fame. The only squat that he achieved at that competition, I wrapped his knees on, so there you go. Same thing, he was a big dude. He wasn't fat either. He was really muscular, really big dude, really nice guy as well. Really like him, and after I wrapped him, he would always make his way to come over and get a photo with me at international comps like GPC Worlds and so on. But he was 170 kilos, fantastic lifter, huge bench. I think out of all of these people on this list, he had the biggest 3-lift bench. I haven't written down their actual numbers, so forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but he was always benching in the high 2s. Most of the time, the other guys were sort of between like 260, 280, whereas Peter was closer to 300 in 3-lift. Then, of course, again, Dan Bell, 2021, broke that record by another 12 kilos, pushing it to 1182.5. And he's held that now until just now. So he's held it for 4 years until Colton's broken it at 1200. So first person to go 1200, huge milestone, but also the owner of that all-time record. Some reasons why this is so significant. So besides the obvious, only 7 people have held this title and Colton now holds it. He holds it being the youngest. He's only 24. He holds it being the lightest. So again, all of these guys were 140 plus, most of them between 160 and 180. Colton did it at 120.4 kilos. So very light since he's broken this record, or when he broke this record. He also became the first person ever to squat 1,000 pounds and deadlift 1,000 pounds raw in the same competition, which is kind of cool because back in 2019, I coached Dylan Hellriegel to the number 1 all-time junior total at the time, which Colton has since beaten. Now Colton holds the number 1 junior total of all time. But when Dylan did that, he was the first person to squat 1,000 pounds and deadlift 900 pounds in the same meet. So both of those big milestones, they're meaningful and meaningless at the same time. But I coached them both, which I'm pretty proud of. On the way to Colton's 1,200 kilo total, he also pulled the second biggest deadlift in powerlifting ever with 470 kilograms. So that falls 17 kilos short of my other lifter, Danny Grigsby, who has pulled 487.5. I'm actually heading to Miami this weekend with Danny, so hopefully by the time you've heard this or by the time this is released, he's gone and done something great with his deadlift. Bit of a shaky prep though, so we'll see. I know he'll pull something out of the air though, because he's an incredible lifter. And also Colton's 470 kilogram squat gives him the 13 biggest raw squat of all time as well. So huge numbers, huge significant numbers. If you go back and watch the lifting of Colton, The other thing was that the numbers were relatively comfortable, especially on bench press and deadlift. So bench press and deadlift, his bench press, it was his second attempt that you see, the 260 kilos. He failed at 272 after that, so 600 pounds. And the deadlift, the third attempt, 470, was to secure the 1200. So we were in discussions, obviously, while he was competing. I unfortunately couldn't make it over there. And he wanted to push a bit harder. So he wanted to go I believe he wanted to go 430, 460, 480. And I said, don't be greedy, go 450 on the second to secure the 1185, and then go 470 on the third to secure that 1200, because that's all he's wanted for so long. So although he had the capacity to pull more, you've all seen the 500 kilo attempt, which got very close to locking out. My advice to him was, don't be greedy. You've got all the time in the world to continue to push this record further and further and further. And none of us have any doubt that he's going to be able to do that. And maybe even those whispers of 500, 300, 500 one day. I know for a fact, I can tell you, in the private conversations we had when he came out here for Big Dogs and stayed at my place for a month, he had raised that 500, 300, 500 to me before anyone on the internet was talking about it. So I know it's in his head somewhere. At the moment, he's extremely process-focused and is less laser-eyed on the end goal and more focused on pushing the training to continue to develop that strength so he can showcase it. So some very, very, very significant numbers. And the fact that he missed that third bench press and had plenty more in the tank on deadlifts suggests that 1200 is going to continue to be nudged forward. The other reason why it's so significant is because I don't actually believe there are many people on the planet right now that could come anywhere near that. So I genuinely believe my other lifter, Theo Maddox, is probably one of the only people who could challenge that. If Theo gets his head straight and his training straight and consistent, Theo has incredible genetics, incredible strength. He is very coachable. He does listen to technical advice. He's had a lot of stuff happening in his life, which has disrupted training in the last 2 years. So if he can get his mind right, purely by virtue of the fact that he holds a larger frame, holds more muscle, is generally bigger, on paper, potentially he could challenge that. The biggest challenge anybody's going to have, because, people will listen to this and throw out, okay, well, what about Jesus? Well, Jesus is in the IPF. I don't think he's putting on reps. I don't think he's jumping on gear anytime soon. I don't really think he'll continue to progress much further than what he currently has with his current training style, with his current technique. I think there are some bottlenecks in there that will potentially slow him down, just like we saw with Jezza, just like we saw with Ray Williams and a lot of those other big guys. So Jesus, you could definitely make the argument for. I just really don't see it practically happening anytime soon. And so the fact that Colton has room to grow from a pure size perspective, he has room to grow from a pure experience perspective. He's only brand new to all of this in the grand scheme of things, and he's young. And the fact that the weights that he moved were relatively comfortable suggests to me that he's going to be very untouchable for a very long time. And I'm happy to be proven wrong, and I'm sure he is too, because that's what he's all about, is pushing the human potential and encouraging other people to push that human potential as well. So I want to give you some history now in terms of what we've achieved together since Colton's come on board with ZeroW and myself as his coach. So again, if you're not aware, Colton's relatively new to this. He's done 6 years of powerlifting. This is his 10th competition in those 6 years. If you go on the main ZeroW podcast, we did an interview when he was over here where he talks about his history in sport and powerlifting. So go listen to that to get more insight as to where he's come from. I'm not here to tell his story, but yeah, he's done 10 comps in 6 years, and 6 years is very inexperienced, because you imagine when you're in powerlifting, the first couple of years, you're just kind of like figuring it out. Then your sort of formative years are like years 2 to maybe 6, and then you become sort of a bit more of a professional powerlifter, and that's where he's transitioning into now. So we actually met in May of 2022. I went over there for a lifter, Kurt Keogh. Kurt Keogh, dear friend of mine. He's my South African dad, and Shana, my South African mum, his wife. Now I've got a baby brother, so shout out to those guys. I went over there for Kurt for a competition called Elite Raw. And also, fun fact about Kurt, 3 people have totaled 1,000 kilos plus in South Africa. Kurt and Colton, both zero lifters, make up 2 of them. Nicolas de Pria is the 3rd one, obviously fantastic lifter, so shout out to Nicolas. So yeah, I went over there in May for Kurt, and while we were over there, a few times they mentioned this Colton guy and mentioned his lifts. And, it was like, yeah, he lifts really strong, but he kind of squats a bit high, and he's a bit of a loose cannon in terms of competition performance and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, Colton rocked up to the competition. I don't know if he remembers this, but I'd looked at his lifts online, and I'd seen his squat, and he'd posted like a 370 bare knee single on squats, and he was wearing long track pants, and I was like, this is fake. Either these plates are fake, he's got knee wraps under his pants, something. Like, people don't squat 370 bare knees. Are you kidding? Whatever. So he comes to the comp, and he's entered in wraps, and we kind of got talking a little bit. He's very shy, very quiet sort of guy, and he's warming up, and he doesn't have wraps on, and he's entered in wraps. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm not going to put on my wraps, and I'll test my opener in the warm-up room, and then I'll go out. And I'm like, what? Or he was going to do his last warm-up in bare knees and then go out and do his opener in wraps. So this is a bit unconventional. He did his second last warm-up, which I think was around 300. I think he was opening on 340. I'd have to check the open powerlifting. I might actually pull it up. But he was doing his last warm-up. His opener was 340. So he did like 300 in bare knees, and it was hard. Like, he was close to failing. And then he loaded up. Can't remember if he loaded 340 or if it was 320. It was something too close to his opener to be the last warm-up. And also, the competition had started. It's like, right, you got to hurry up. So the warm-up room had cleared out. It was just like me, Kurt, and maybe one other person. And he's loaded up this way, and I was like, we need to spot this guy because I don't think he's going to do it. And he got stapled by it. He got absolutely folded. And I was like, what are you doing, bro? So he went out there, he loaded up 340, squatted like the hardest 340 ever, and then put a second attempt of 370. I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, in my head, I was going, this is what happens when you use fake plates and you lie to yourself, and you're putting, wraps under your soft suit, under your track pants and all this stuff. You're just lying to yourself. Got talking, or got some information that he was sick. He had some like stomach bug or gastro, and me being a skeptic, I'm like, I don't believe it. It's just, silly. There's such talent, such strength. Why would you waste it like that? Anyway, he went on to get stapled by his second attempt squat. He opened on a 180 bench or 190 bench, and then got stapled by 200. And then he failed his opener on deadlift and left. Didn't complete the comp. And I was like, this guy is strong as hell, but he has no idea what he's doing. It turns out it's not that he didn't know what he was. It's not that he didn't know what he was doing. He was actually genuinely sick, and he was actually genuinely squatting 370 in bare knees. And so, because I kept an eye on him after the competition, just on social media, and I was like, he was actually just having a bad day. Like, my skepticism was wrong, way wrong. So I reached out to him in June, like a month after I got back. I was like, hey, bro, if you ever want sponsorship, let me know. Here's my track record of coaching. Here's all the people I've coached, all the numbers I've produced. We went back and forth on social media a bit, and he was kind of like feeling me out and a little bit flaky, and then responded to that email like 2 months later. And I was like, okay, this is a bit late, but better than never. So he responded a couple of months later in the positive, and then he had a meet that he wanted to do on his own, so he did that. So he responded around August. He totaled 960 at a meet in, I believe, October, and then we got started straight away in November. So his starting total with me was 960 kilos. We trained together then, and by his next competition, which I believe it was in the middle of the next year, I'll just triple check that. It was in May the following year. So we started in November. So 6 months later, after starting together, we added 92.5 kilos to his total. So we'd added almost 100 kilos to his total in 5 months. Over the next year then, because he didn't compete for another year after that, we added another 67 kilos to that total, pushing it up even further. Then we added another 35 kilos 5 months after that. another 45 kilos 4 months after that. So the 35 kilos we added ended up with Big Dogs, the competition that we did in November here last year. And then since then, he's added 45 kilos to this 1,200 kilo total. So a big part of that, just to give you some insight, because again, listen to that solo podcast I did on coaching elite lifters. A lot of people think that just strong people are strong and they can do whatever and just get stronger. It's the opposite. It has to be so much more precise. There has to be so much more thought and consideration, not just because of the absolute load and injury risk, but also because there's a lot more on the line for them. It's really the opposite. Everything matters and everything needs to be considered carefully, because getting strong when you're freakishly strong, getting stronger when you're freakishly strong has to be precise. No time can be wasted. We have to maintain momentum. And so we've been able to add 240 kilos to Colton's total in 2 years. And I'll tell you straight up some of the things that I believe have done this. And this is not random. I want to make this clear right off the bat, because a lot of people think, well, Colton's just a freak. He's just one of these freaks no matter what he does, even though I just said what I said. I've done this time and time again. Dylan Hellriegel, the guy we broke the junior all-time world record with, we added 100 kilos to his squat in a year. We added hundreds of kilos to his total. I've taken people from, an average bench to the best bench in Australia, and I've done it time and time again. I've done it more than once. I've done it over and over and have a proven track record of doing this, and not just with the elite lifters as well, with really anybody. Or people elite in their weight class or division, like Jen Smith in the under 60 kilo female division and 56s, and Lilley Riley and Theo Maddox, and all of these elite level lifters of their various shapes and sizes, we continue to make stronger. So some of the really important things is that technique matters. Technique matters, I would argue, more than anything when it comes to high level performance. The way you got to look at it is the next time you max out, your technique under that max weight is going to be the average of what you've done in training. You fail lifts because of technical breakdown. I don't care what anyone else says. You fail lifts because of technical breakdown. And strength is an attribute that's part of technical breakdown, right? So you get all bent out of shape because you weren't strong enough to hold a particular position. Strength, technique, same thing. If we can iron out the bottlenecks in people's technique, then we can express strength more efficiently. We can showcase that on the platform. Look at it like this. This is probably the simplest analogy I can draw to make this real. It's the whole leg press versus squat thing, right? Your leg strength is almost never the limitation in your squat. It's not because your legs are too weak to squat. It's because the power that needs to then be transferred from the legs into the barbell gets limited because you lose the position of your pelvis. You lose the position of your torso. Your bracing suffers. Your upper back suffers. Something in that chain breaks down, which is why everybody generally can leg press more than what they squat, or can do more on a leg machine than what they squat, because of technical bottlenecks. The same exists for all three lifts. So really strong focus on technique. And you can see this. Go back and look at one of the first things that we did together is he wanted to do a fun deadlift comp because he really wanted to pull 400. He pulled 400. Look at his technique leading into that 400 from like 2021, 22, when we started working together, compared to his deadlift now. Significant improvements. Even if you don't know technique very well, look at how much cleaner and better it looks now than it looked back then. Look at the same for his squat and for his bench press. That is going to be one of the primary drivers of his incredible strength gains. On top of that, very low volume squat, bench, deadlift. The lie that we've been sold into in powerlifting is that squat, bench, deadlift training makes you stronger. And the reality is that hypertrophy and strength are very much the same thing. Like your strength adaptations are pretty much the same as hypertrophy adaptations. I'm way oversimplifying. Don't crucify me with your evidence-based stuff in the comments. What I'm really saying is that the strength work that we do, in air quotes, strength work, our triples, our doubles, our singles, or even fives, this is really skill work. And skill, when it comes to powerlifting, another thing that's butchered in the powerlifting world, skill is not technique. Skill is technique plus load. Because you can make anyone move exactly how you want to under a 40% weight. Do it under a 90% weight, very different story. So skill is the ability to maintain position. So it's the ability to hold your strength under load, under relatively heavy loads. So building that into training is very important. To do that, what you need to do is a strong focus on technique. You need to have your technical cueing down pat. You need to know how to integrate those technical changes, both in the main lift through various modulated intensity variations of that exercise. So in English, like a tempo squat, but also through hypertrophy and dedicated accessories where technical bottlenecks can be improved. So we do very low volume squat, bench, deadlift. My programming for Colton will have him squat, bench, deadlift once per week. So one main squat, one main bench, one main deadlift. No secondaries on those things unless we're doing tempo work, but that'll be on the same day in very low volume. Like I'm talking 2 to 3 sets max of SPD, then accessories. That's the bread and butter. This works for the top level lifters. This works for entry level lifters. There's arguments that can be made for certain things, and that's not what this is about. This is not a programming podcast. But if you're looking for the secret in this particular case, it is a strong focus on technique, high intensity, both squat and both SPD and accessories, and a consistent focus on how we can integrate technical improvement both through the accessories and the main lift, which comes from the actual coaching. That's really been, quote unquote, the secret. And if you listen to me for long enough, I talk about this stuff all the time. I'm happy to go into the weeds if you want me to, just let me know. But that's about it. That's what I wanted to really highlight on this, is just really put into perspective how incredible this performance actually was, but also give you some history and some insight into where we've come from. One thing that I didn't do actually that I said I'd do, which is talk a little bit more about the insights of this actual prep. So Colton had a really bad adductor tendinopathy and has been on and off for a while, and it really ramped up after Big Dogs. So between Big Dogs and the competition he just did with the 1,200 kilos, again, 4 months, and we added 45 kilos to his total, he didn't squat and deadlift most of that time. So there was a real art of toying around with things to keep some exposure high, to keep accessories going, to keep momentum rolling, so that we could then express that on the platform when the time came. And so that's one of the things he won't talk about, because like to him, it's like it didn't matter. His mind was strong enough to keep that going. And from a principles perspective, you don't have to be doing SBD 20 times a week to maintain skill. And so we got some exposure through that prep. We managed it. We communicated well. And as a result, we're able to showcase that on the platform. You may have heard things going around about Colton didn't peak. I want to shed some light on that, because that comes from something that I said in one of my stories, I believe, or maybe in the main post that I did. We didn't do a dedicated peaking block. That is true. But you have to understand that the way that this all came about, Colton was in what I call a transition phase, so working between sort of like 85 and 95%, getting ready for a peaking block. So the transition phase, deload, peaking block competition. And what happened was he got notified that he probably wasn't going to get his visa in time to make his flight to Ireland. He found that out on Thursday. The competition he did was on Saturday. So he let me know on Thursday, and he's like, I'm going to do this competition because I need to do something. I'm getting ready. You need to understand, he wasn't mid-training that week. That was his deload week. So he'd only done one session. He was pretty fresh, and it had come off the back of really heavy doubles to close out that transition block. So I would say that he was pre-peaked. So while we didn't do a dedicated peaking phase per se, the conditions were such that it wasn't just random. It just wasn't plucked out of the thin air. He was semi-ready to lift really heavy. So I just want to clarify that in case people think he was doing like sets of 10 and then all of a sudden just jumped in and busted out 1,200 kilos, because although that's phenomenal and he could probably do that these days, that just wasn't the reality of this particular situation. All right, I've rambled on for not long enough. I'm sure I'll talk about this more and more on many other people's podcasts. I wanted to do my podcast first, so now I'll reach out to the people that have asked me to come on, and you'll hear plenty more about this. Just keep looking for it. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you soon. Bye.